Welcome to the Food Freedom Habit Podcast, where you can find freedom from food crazies using nothing but your own brain. With me, Lydia, the lifestyle coach. We do like permanent food and body peace without tracking one trigger or calorie. Whether you're dealing with overeating, binge eating, bulimia, food obsession, body hate, or the endless diet cycle, we do all this without delving into past trauma, starting yet another food plan, or monitoring every meal. Live a free life aligned with your health and values. If you're ready for something real, you're in the right place. All episodes are 100% free, so please subscribe to and review our podcast. This is Lydia, the lifestyle coach, and so excited to bring you another amazing story of freedom. And that's exactly what we do here. This is about freedom from any sort of food crazies like binge eating, bulimia, overeating, overthinking about food all the time, all those things that sort of plague us. This is about how to just have freedom from that for real, using nothing but your brain. So that's what we do. I was a bulimic for years, a binge eater for years. I'm now a completely normal eater, free. Food is not a big deal at all. And with the hundreds of women and men that we have helped to just have lives where food is not a big deal anymore and they can just move on. You know, every story is unique and every story is so beautiful, and especially the amazing story today. So I'm really excited for you guys to meet an incredible woman, Jennifer, who is on with us today. Jennifer, hello, welcome.
Yeah, how are you?
Oh, I'm so good. So happy that you're on and so excited for everyone to get to know you. So you guys, Jennifer has had an amazing journey and she has an incredible story, and she's been willing to share it with us today as we celebrate her and all the amazing things that have happened in her life. So tell us a little bit, just like how things started, like your journey with, food and restriction and all that sort of stuff. What's sort of like your food story, how you got to where you were, when things sort of started escalating?
Yeah. So I'm one of four kids, and I've got two older sisters and a younger brother. And my mum so I'm from New Zealand originally. My mum, who was very much a wonderful woman, a real fashionista, she actually took me to my first Weight Watchers meeting. I don't quite remember, it was somewhere around 13 or 14. And I was the only one in the family who, quote unquote, had a weight issue. And so, to be going to Weight Watchers at that age when no one else in the family was doing it. So my meals were separate, and back then, because this was like several decades ago now. Back then it was just super, super, strict. I had like basically lettuce and tuna. That's the meal that I remember so much. And so that sort of started me getting into a little bit of, sort of secret eating. And so that's really when I think that the binge purge cycle started. Binging, purging, restricting, binging, purging, restricting. And so it just went on and on and on for decades. And I've just been on every single weight loss program you could ever imagine, and would be able to get sort of several months together and get down to that goal weight and be there for a nanosecond and then not be able to keep it up, and the binging would start again. And as I got older, the purging behavior became more and more, because I was just, having such a hard time with the restricting as I got older, because I'd just been doing it for so long, that the binging sort of, instead of restricting, then led to purging more and more often. And so that's when it's like, okay, you know what, I really, really need to look at this and figure out a different way of approaching this eating disorder that I have.
Yeah. Wow. And I know that this is something that so many of us identify with, is when we were just kids, right? It's like the restricting started from a place that wasn't even our choice. Like it was something we were
Yes.
just, so young. And that's a really common thing. And, sort of like the shame that goes along with that and the rebellion and the secret eating. And it's like eating is such an incredibly natural thing. Like we all want to eat, and having that sort of, taken away, and sort of the change that happens in us is so difficult. And you bring up another thing that is just really common and such an important thing to understand is we go along and we do things as long as they're like working, and I'm saying that in quotes, right? Of just like,
Yeah.
oh well, I can binge because I can restrict, right? A
Yeah.
lot of times these things tend to escalate because the ways that we try to manage our binging tend to not last. Like they don't keep working how they used to. Restricting gets harder and harder, and then purging gets harder and harder. And then, health stuff happens. It's just like it all sort of like, picks up momentum, which can be a really
Yeah.
scary thing. So
Yeah.
for you, Jennifer, like when was it for you that you like called it an eating disorder, or when you sort of knew that something was wrong with the way that you were eating?
Probably, I want to say it was my around my late 30s. I had been living and working in Asia for many, many years, and I was just very, very focused on my career, and so I was able to sort of hide a lot in the eating disorder then. So I wasn't really calling it an eating disorder back then. It was just like, oh, you know what? I eat a lot and I have a hard time losing weight. And for a long time during those years when I was living and working around Asia, I just kind of gave into it, and so I did put on a lot of weight. And then when I got transferred with the company that I was working with back to the States, that was when I really sort of wanted to get a handle on it. And so I can't even remember how I even found out about it, but I went to my first Overeaters Anonymous meeting. And so that's when I started labeling it as an eating disorder, compulsive overeater, food addict, sugar addict, all of these sort of addiction terms. So it was sort of in my late 30s. So,
Okay.
about 15 years ago now, I guess.
Yeah. And what was that experience for you to sort of like think of yourself as a sugar addict or a food addict, or like how did that impact your life? What was it like for you to have that experience of transitioning to, what you now labeled yourself as?
Well, it was interesting because it was helpful for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's what I am. Okay, well, shoot, that makes sense if that's what I am. But then it just didn't really. The program itself just tended to make it worse. Actually, the compulsion in my head around the food and just thinking about food, and it just got worse and worse and worse because all of a sudden there's like large food groups that I completely cut out. And so, in terms of what was happening in my mental, the mental energy around it, it just really took over actually. And it was kind of ironic because, a lot of people seem to get some sort of relief in that program. For me, it was the opposite. It just made the mental strife and anxiety, and it just made it worse and worse and worse. And then when I would binge, um, which I inevitably always did because I was restricting so much, it just made me feel like shit. I'm sorry, I don't
No,
think
you're
I
fine.
can
You can
swear,
say
but
whatever
it
you
just
want.
made me feel so awful about myself, and that I was damaged and broken, and again, that would lead to just more and more purging behavior because then I felt like I couldn't show up to the meetings, so there was a lot of shame around it. There was a lot of hidden behavior. I feel like that actually even accelerated the hidden behavior.
Yeah.
So, which then internally just made me feel, even more shameful around
Mhm.
it.
So
So,
I know like that cycle of shame and feeling so, bad, and how that stays with you. And it's a horrible thing to have to feel over and over sort of in this cycle. What
yeah.
else did you try, Jennifer, to try to be done with, this cycle?
So then when it's like, okay, well, this isn't working for me. So then it was just again going back to, sort of the amount of money and time I've spent on this program and that program. And it's like, oh, well, Jenny Craig, I tried that in my early 20s and that worked for a bit. So let me try that again. Weight Watchers, oh, that worked for a little bit in my late teens. So let me try that again. And so it was just always signing up for the next thing. And then also just the amount of just time I would spend like researching the latest, the latest diet. So, paleo, all of these different types of the Atkins, I mean, just every single one of them, anything that was new on the market, I would try. South Beach. And they would always, work for shorter and shorter periods of time, actually. They would always work for a little bit. And then I just, just couldn't keep it up at all. Just couldn't keep it up. And
Yeah.
so then my weight would just go up and up and up. So I'd lose weight, get down to that magic number that I thought I should be, and then would just lose it, lose the discipline, go back up and then a little bit more. And so that was happening a lot. And then the last one I did actually, which was interesting because it was when I found out about you and started working with you. The last one was a program that is very expensive, medical, supervised, so weekly meetings in the doctor's offices and so forth, and it was really expensive. And it worked for longer than the other programs had, more recently, but it was because actually it also relied on some drugs, some appetite reducing drugs. And so I think that's how it sort of worked for a little bit longer. But at the end of the day, it didn't do anything to give me peace around thinking about food and thinking about me as being a failure in terms of how I approach food. So I just, even though I was looking better on the outside and people like, the compliments and everything, and, just, it was just crazy. Like, oh my God, you look so happy. And it's like, well, inside I was so not happy because I knew that I was just spending 80% of my day thinking about food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such an important thing to bring up. It's like, we all need to just give ourselves a reminder that being thinner isn't happier. So many times people will be like, oh, you've lost weight, you are happier. And it's just like this weird reinforcement. And it's a weird space to be in when you're so unhappy inside and you're getting
Yeah.
all these compliments about your unhappiness, about like the thing that you're doing to yourself. It's a very strange space.
It is. It is. You're right. You're right. Yeah.
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 And I love how you said, just like that they didn't do anything for like your peace around food, like the peace about food in your mind. Because I think so many times we're looking for, what am I going to do to stop this behavior? What am
Yeah.
I going to do to stop myself from doing this thing? And
Yeah.
sometimes we don't even think about how much is happening internally. I mean, I've had women that I've coached that they're not doing the behavior anymore. They've been done with binging and purging for years, but they can't take that 90% of their mental energy is all about food all day long. Like that's
Yeah.
still a horrible thing to be living with. So like that internal piece, I'm so glad you brought that up because that's so important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What was sort of like a typical cycle for you, Jennifer? Like what was that like? How did it feel?
So it would start with restricting, always started with restricting, where I would be trying to, eat low calorie, cut out, lots of food groups. So no flour, no sugar, no processed foods, no carbs, basically. And so it would start with that, and then it would always just sort of, it was just so hard to stay on top of, and it would always end with a binge where I would, go to the supermarket, or I'd be at home because I knew that going to the supermarket in this, state of mind was dangerous. And so I'd be at home just looking at menus online, like thinking with all of the food delivery services that we have now, just looking and planning and it would just be hours. It literally would be hours. I mean, for anyone who's normal around food, if they could just live inside my brain for a day during that period, it would just be like, what? So, or if I was at the supermarket, just roaming the aisles, like, what do I feel like? What do I feel like? What's going to make me, what's going to make this urge go away? Like, what's the perfect binge? And as I was planning that perfect binge, whether it's looking at, menus online or in the supermarket, the other recurring thought was always like, this is going to be the last one. So make it perfect, make it perfect. Doesn't matter, how much it is, but you can have as much as you want, but it's got to be perfect. It absolutely has to be perfect because this is the last time you're ever going to do that. And tomorrow morning you're going to wake up and you're never going to do this again. So that was the conversation that I was always having with myself as well. And of course, so then I would, eventually, and it was also a lot of fighting it up until the point of, even during the planning, it was still a lot of fighting it right up until the point where, I started the eating and then I couldn't stop. And then I would feel so uncomfortable in my body that I just had to purge. And so then I'd spend the night up purging basically, and
Yeah.
then just feel like absolutely the worst person on the face of the planet the next morning.
Yeah.
So, and so then the whole idea of, well, I'll start again tomorrow, it less and less took hold. So the cycle would become longer and longer and longer of just like eating, purging at night, eating, purging at night, eating, purging at night. And so then I started kind of missing, I have my own business. So then I started getting into the space of, I can't go to work today. I can't go into the office. I'll just work from home. Now, luckily, I have some flexibility to be able to do that to a certain extent, but I just was in such a food sort of hangover the next day as well, and just so uncomfortable in my body that I just, I was not productive. I was just really doing the bare minimum to get by. And then also with friends and socially, there was so much isolating going on as well, because I felt like even if I sort of looked the same on the outside, wherever I was in that up and down cycle, I still just felt like everybody could see it on me that I was, doing all of this secret eating and secret purging. And so I just didn't want to be around people. So I would just more and more just like, isolate at home as well.
Yeah.
It was pretty miserable. Mm.
Yeah, I know that is it's a hard place to be in. And thank you for sharing and being so real. And I know those feelings absolutely. That's a really common way to feel as well, is just like that everyone can see. Like even though it's something that only we know about, maybe not one other person knows about it, it's just always this feeling of like people can tell. Like I can't be this miserable. I can't feel this gross. I can't feel this ashamed and nobody tell, right? So it's
Yeah,
like we isolate ourselves because it's like this, people are going to be able to just see right through this, and it's so mentally distracting. It's like you can't focus on anyone, you can't enjoy anyone's company because it's like
yeah,
always running in the background.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
totally, totally.
absolutely. And for you, what would you say is the hardest part, or was the hardest part of being in this cycle?
Um, just the shame. I think that was the big word for me for most of my life, was just shame, and fear of being found out. So, and that actually seeped into a lot of other areas in my life. Because I'm a fairly social person. I can kind of chit chat with anybody, and my business is doing quite well. Like, so just all on the outside, I just looked like I had it all together, and so this sort of inner feeling of being a fraud just really permeated everything, and that was the worst thing, and that was where I had the least peace.
Yeah.
Because I just want to live my life from a place of integrity where words and actions match, and So that it just felt like I was being very inauthentic with everybody, including myself. Yeah.
And I love that you bring that up, because I think that's such an important thing for people to know they're not alone in as well. I mean, so many of the women in our group are just like the most in integrity, authentic, successful, powerful people, that it was like, they're like the last people that you would think are struggling with something like this. And I
Yeah.
feel like it's such a hard thing to be out of integrity and feel like you're doing things that you're ashamed of and that you feel out of control, because it's the complete opposite in like every other area of your life. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else about just like that time, like when this was just such a constant and difficult thing, that you wanted to share and just like share your experience in?
Yeah, so I've lived overseas from, my home country for a very long time now, but I'm actually super close with my family. I've got a really wonderful family, and I come from a really incredible country as well. It's pretty magical. And I was just getting more and more fearful of going home every year as well to see everybody, because again, it's just sort of like this, you know, like needing to put up that defensive layer, and not being able to show up and just enjoy being with my family and enjoy, uh, you know, being around friends and enjoy just being in this really wonderful country. And so that was really starting to bother me a lot, because those are the most important relationships for me. And I was getting super, super fearful of going home and seeing family. So that was definitely a big thing for me as well. That,
Mm.
and it always became like this panic thing around, sort of around the beginning of November. I'd be like, oh my God, I've got like, 6 weeks to get my body looking normal. Um, and so it would be just like, okay, I'm gonna, I'm gonna start on Monday. I'm just gonna like be on this super strict diet, and I'm gonna exercise like crazy, and I'm gonna show up, and I'm gonna look fabulous, and everyone's gonna think it's all okay. And it just so often, and more often actually, I'd be able to again do that for a little bit, but then just go off the wagon. And so, for the last, I don't know, like it was starting to be, probably about the last decade, I would say, except for the last few years, um, where I was showing up, like, looking pretty awful, actually, pretty fat, because I would start it a couple of months out, but not be able to sustain the restriction.
Yeah.
And so then it was like this sort of, panic thing, where I actually did even eat more, like, so I was showing up in a not looking good at all, and that was just really awful. And then my time down there was just also just white knuckling, like, through the vacation, and not being able to just enjoy it. And then the minute I'd get dropped off at the airport and through security, the binging would start. And
Yeah.
I would just like binge all the way back to the States. And in my head, I'm still having this conversation. Okay, you can go for it. Like, you've been so good over the last few weeks. Like, just go for it. And then the minute that you land and get home, you can be healthy again. And of course, that never happened.
Yeah.
So,
That
yeah,
last chance, right? That, that idea
yeah,
of, and it just, like keeps coming in this pattern, and like the things that we love the very most. Like, I know how close you are with your family, and that trip and like those beautiful things. It's so difficult to have the things that we love the most be just like so injured and hurt by being in this cycle. So I
yeah,
mean, thank you
yeah,
for sharing that. I mean, and that story, your experience, everything that you've been through is so, so important and valuable. And I'm so excited to just celebrate how far you've come in this amazing transformation. So, I mean, what would you say, like on the like after working together and on the other side of things, what would you say you're enjoying most about how life is different now?
oh, just showing up. showing up. Um, so, just knowing that I can just be spontaneous again. It's be spontaneous socially, be spontaneous with, meeting people in my business, just being like, just like not hiding anymore. It's just really, really fun. And I'm in a fairly serious relationship now, and that's just going really, really well because I can just show up like every day. I don't wake up now thinking about all of the terrible things, quote unquote terrible things I did yesterday. I just wake up and I go about my day and I show up. And when I say that I'm going to do something, I do it. And when I make an appointment, I show up. Like the number of times that has not happened in my life is just kind of mind-boggling, where I'll just blow people off and blow off appointments and so on. So that's really cool. And then just like not thinking about, it's definitely still there because I'm a very new graduate, so there's definitely still some chatter going on around food, but it's just quieter, 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 quieter. And because I just sort of let myself eat whatever I feel like eating, and my body just kind of is like getting better and better at knowing what it wants and how much it wants and when it wants it, and I just don't have to fight it anymore. I just like say, okay, cool, all right, I'm hungry, let me eat something. Oh, so now I've eaten something. Okay, cool, I don't need to eat anymore. It's just really, really freeing. So freeing. It's
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I mean, to just sort of a normal eater, that would seem so normal, right? But it's like, I know, like, if somebody would have told me back in my crazy days, like, you know what, it's possible for you to just like eat something when you're
Yeah.
hungry and then just like move on with your day. Like that, man, what I would have given to be able, to like experience that. So just like it seems simple, but that's life. Like we eat every single day. And for it to not be a
Yeah.
big deal to be able to, eat and move on and show up and like get you back. Like that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And, there's been a couple of little slips here and there. And just to be able to like not make a big deal of it. Like it's not the end of the world. It's one afternoon, it's one meal, it's like, it's one day. Just move on. Like so the self-compassion that I'm having as well, that's been something new. So okay, well, that wasn't ideal, but let's, just like, let's look at what we learned there and then just move on. Just move
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that because there's freedom in any time that you want, right? It's just like, no matter where in the cycle, no matter what happens, it's like, oh, okay. Like, look, here's a time where I can choose freedom and move on. And I just want to say
Yeah.
how proud of you I am in showing up and practicing and learning that skill. This is not about like, well, let's, find some magic and hope that it sticks. It's like, oh, okay, like there's practice and
Yeah.
we're actually going to learn how to do this so that you can just be free. So how is
Yeah.
your relationship different with food now than it used to be?
It just, I'm excited about food for the first time in decades. Like, like flavors are awesome. and and there's a lot of myths around, a lot of stories I've been carrying around in my head about me personally, what I can and cannot do with food, and I'm just sort of, breaking through all those myths. So, you know bread is not evil. And I'm not a sugar addict. I am not a food addict. No, none of these things are actually true.
Yeah,
I'm just, if I just have a normal relationship with food, then I can eat whatever I like whenever I want it, as much as my body feels like it needs. So it's just this very freeing, like that is the word that just keeps coming back to me: freedom and peace, freedom and peace. So to have this peace around food, to know that, I can be definitive as well around the choices. Like, okay, well, what do I feel like? It doesn't matter. It's like it's one meal. It's not the rest of your life. So just make a decision and then move on, and move on so that you can enjoy the other parts of your life. It's I'm thinking, I would say that I've gone from thinking like 90% of the time about food and dieting and restricting, and how I look and how my clothes fit, and what do people see me as, because of how I look. I've gone from thinking about that maybe like 90% of the day to, I don't know, maybe like 30, 35% now. So
Yeah,
I'm
like
still
all
working on
your
some of
lunch.
the, the body
Yeah.
positivity stuff. So for
Hmm.
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. And like, how does that change things for you to have that much of your brain back? 60% of your brain back than what you had. Like, how does that change
Yeah.
things for you?
Well, so, again, the personal relationships, I'm just like showing up and just being with people. So in a way that I feel like I haven't in so long. I feel like I can show up now. I always felt like I would sort of give 80% and then always keep like a 20% in any friendship, relationship, whatever, and keep it that, to myself. And now I feel like all the walls have come down. Now I'm just showing up, and people are responding really well to that. The other thing that I am just finding is I'm just so productive in my work, like just so productive. And so much so that, I'm not even having to work like, a gazillion hours a week, because I'm just so focused. I've got that mental capacity back again, where it's just like I'm more in the moment with everything I do, whether it's social, whether it's like being out and going on a hike, whether it's, in the office working, whether it's with customers, just being super, super present, because I don't have all of this rubbish going on in my head anymore.
Yeah, that's so fun. I mean, that sounds like living. Like that sounds
Yeah,
like life, like being present, you being with people, doing what you want. And it sounds so much more happy. Like I can see it that it's so much more happy. It's just like
yeah,
that is
yeah,
such a beautiful thing. And I love just like that productivity. It's like I think sometimes we don't realize how much we're not doing because
yeah.
this is taking up so much. There's another gal in our group. She's just wonderful. And she sent me a message and she's like, Lydia, I'm making $1,000 more a week. Like she didn't change anything else except just like fix her food stuff. And it's just like,
Yeah,
you can just do so much more and in such a more like present and confident way. Like it's amazing.
yeah. And on the other side, like, because I do my books, because of my business, I'm, really on top of my finances, how much less I'm spending on food too.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah, top
Yeah.
line's going up, bottom line's, the expenses are going down.
Yeah. That's a really
Silly.
cool direction for both things to be going, right? It's just like,
Yeah,
and you get to like enjoy that, like for your life. For your
yeah,
lifetime, you get to spend way less on food and earn way more in your business. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And have clothes, like, just that's the other thing, like, thinking about clothes. Now I
Hmm.
just get up and, like, just put on clothes.
Yeah.
There's no angst. They're just clothes.
Yeah. It's really fun. So actually when I found my set point weight, just like once
Yeah.
my body was finally like my body, I'm like, oh, there you are. I actually for the first time in my life went out and like bought clothes because I could
Ah,
actually have clothes that I liked that fit. Because everything before was like, oh, well, I'll hang on to this for when I'm smaller. I'll just have these sizes for when I'm
yeah,
bigger. It's like, I don't want to buy anything nice because I'm not to my goal weight yet. It was just like, I finally
yeah,
bought clothes. And it's so nice to just be able to like walk into the closet, like you said, and get
yeah,
dressed. Just eat when you eat and move on. Get dressed
yeah,
in the morning and then just move on. Like all these little things that used to have so much angst, like you said, like you just can just
yeah.
be like nothing. Like you can focus on the stuff you want to focus on.
Yeah, and it's just like, when we say this now, or when I say this now, it's like, oh my God, people who are just normal around food would just think, what is wrong with you that you're so excited about being able to do that? Because, it's just, this is what normal living is. Yeah.
Yeah. And normal living after, I mean, a lifetime of
Yeah.
disordered eating and having this take up so much. I mean, normal living like tastes so good, for lack of a better way to say it. But it's like, it really is a beautiful, pleasurable, wonderful thing. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anything else for you that is just so much better, different than it used to be? Anything else about, life of freedom that you wanted to share, just that you've discovered?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think you're incredible. And the principles that you've taught me, they're so different. They're so radical from conventional wisdom. But what I'm really having fun with now is applying those same principles to other areas of my life, to, just those normal insecurities that I think probably, most people have. Like just being able to listen to what's going on in the brain and talk to, those various parts of our brain, whether it's about food, whether it's about body image, or whether it's about some other, just insecurity that I might have, to be able to sort of separate out you know, where that chatter is coming from, and being able to sort of, get to a place of peace around some of the other areas of my life as well that I have insecurities in. That's really powerful. So
That's
they're
awesome.
tools that, that I'm starting to apply all over the place.
And I love that, because this really is the gift that keeps on giving. It's this skill that you can use with anything, because everything that we do in life is just our thoughts in our brain. Like everything comes from that. So knowing how to navigate that and what to do, and being having mastery over that own process, like, is
Yeah.
such a cool thing. And I love that you're applying them to all these different areas to just like up level whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really neat. Really neat.
Yeah, beautiful. Anything else on your mind for today that you want to share as part of your story, Jennifer?
Just really happy, really compassionate with myself. It's funny, I started having some beating up behavior when I was like, like thinking, why didn't I figure this out earlier?
Mm,
Why didn't I find someone like Lydia earlier? So again, that's like, that's just voices in my head, right? And so to be able to have the conversation with that part of my brain that was beating myself up about not cracking this earlier in my life. Um, uh, so yeah, so just being able to have that compassion. So well, it just happened now. So, and I've got the rest of my life ahead of me. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That's beautiful. I love that. Huge congratulations. It has been so fun to just see the amazing work that you have put in and the amazing results that you've gotten. And freedom is absolutely possible. And I love you just being another testament to that. So thank you guys for tuning in, and just celebrating along with us Jennifer's amazing story. And if you guys would like help with being free as well, like if that is a desire of yours, you don't have to wait. Like, this is when you've heard about it right now. You just heard about it, right? So you can go to lydialifestyle.com/session. That's lydialifestyle.com/session. You can have a free session with either myself or the team. Like, we can help you with that foundational step. We have an amazing Facebook support group. We have a master class about how to be done with binge eating. Like, we have all these incredible things as just a free service and a help for you guys. So, stay tuned here. There are new videos all the time. And thank you so much for being on, Jennifer. Your story is beautiful. I adore you. It has been so fun to have this journey together. And this is Lydia, the lifestyle coach, and Jennifer signing off. Mwah. Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in. If you felt a spark here and want to see how these principles can work in your own life, here is your next step. Pop over to lydialifestyle.com/session. That's lydialifestyle.com/session.
where you can book a free session with our team. We'll give you a call and together find clarity on 3 things. 1, the exact cycle you keep getting sucked into. 2, what isn't working with your approach. And 3, what's missing to close the gap between food prison and food freedom. We have helped free hundreds of women all over the world from their food struggles. These are proven principles that work, no matter how long you've been stuck. This is Lydia, the Lifestyle Coach, signing off. Mwah!